What actually drew me to you was your focus on the breath, on prana. Because pran shakti, or the power of the breath, is actually everything in creativity.
I was obsessed with this thing, and my parents were freaking out because I was spending all my time on this.
Because, with music, I found that people need so much of being tutored or teaching before they find the confidence to create.
Figured out was actually there's creative ways that exist for us to do anything in this world. Everything's limitless. There's a limitless potential. Whatever you can think of, there's a way, a loophole, or this is what I want to do. It changed my life.
Because we're so carried away by the external.
The first time I heard anyone talk about diet, nutrition, lifestyle changes, breathing, meditation as a prevention rather than a cure for disease. Maybe not everyone can be creative. Not everyone can be entrepreneurial. Maybe you need all the right circumstances to unlock that.
Perhaps that you weren't doing what your heart was really into.
And I remember that night going home and this terror, pain and darkness, and having a dark night of the soul moment and flashing lights and migraines like crazy. And
we all crave that authenticity, or even how to reach that dimension of ourselves.
You feel like a rejection from them. That causes an unconscious fear. You may not consciously be aware of this internal panic that's going on because you see everything as a threat. You don't trust anything anymore. You need to be grounded. Otherwise, there's no structure, there's no routine, right? And if you go off balance, you can get all the vata illnesses. You get nervous, anxious, you can't sleep at night. You lose lots of weight, you become very skinny. And if you're pitta imbalanced, then you get the heartburn, indigestion, gas.
Whatever unique thing they've created, whatever idea they've developed, how to get that out in the world. My guest today walks a path that is at once ancient and radically contemporary. Niraj Naik trained as a pharmacist, someone schooled in the science of healing from the outside in. But a debilitating chronic illness in his 20s set him on a very different journey, one that led him inward through breathwork, meditation, music, and the body's own extraordinary capacity to restore itself. That journey became SOMA Breath, a global wellness movement now practiced in over 100 countries, currently being studied by the Cambridge University and built on the conviction that the greatest pharmacy is not in any dispensary, but within each of us. Niraj is also a music producer and the force behind Breath in Beats, a sound therapy project that weaves electronic music with guided breath journeys. He's spoken at TEDx led retreats and ceremonies at conscious gatherings worldwide, and built a community of over 1 million people drawn to his particular synthesis of ancient pranayamic wisdom and modern science. What I find most compelling about Niraj's work is how it sits at the intersection of things we tend to keep separate: the body and the mind, the ancient and the scientific, the personal and the universal. In many ways, his work asks a question that sits at the heart of this podcast. What becomes possible when we turn our awareness inward and learn to trust what we find there? Welcome to the Creativity Dialogues. Enjoy the podcast. Hi, Niraj. Welcome to the Creativity Dialogues podcast.
Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be here.
As you're aware that the Creativity Dialogues tries to unveil the various components that are involved in creativity or creative making. What actually drew me to you was your focus on the breath, on prana, because pran shakti, or the power of the breath, is actually everything in creativity. And it's the very energy, the very life force of the human. And so it's so significant. I always feel that in creativity, people talk a lot about the process of creativity, um, what they wish to do, the new ideas they came up with. But little is spoken about just the human condition that enables creativity. So, our very physicality, our our mental abilities, everything is so dependent on our physical health and energy levels. So, your work with breath really fascinated me. And I thought that your thoughts would be very valuable to those who are seeking to walk on the path of creativity. But before we delve into all that, I thought that let's begin with just getting to know you, a little bit of your background. Your name is Niraj Naik, which one would assume is someone from India, but you grew up in the UK. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Certainly, yeah. So, yeah, I grew up in the UK near London, and I have Indian parents who are from Gujarat originally, but my dad actually was born in Africa. So, so I was raised in a very kind of academic focused Indian immigrant family, and they all only care about not creativity; they care about security. So their entire focus is get a good job, become a doctor, lawyer, accountant, pharmacist, dentist, one of those, right? Um, and don't do anything too creative because it's too risky, right? So I got pushed into that line, but my dad made a funny kind of interception into my reality tunnel at the time, being 14 years old. He bought me a keyboard for the first time, a little Yamaha keyboard, and but he didn't give me any lessons for it. He just gave me the keyboard and said, "Here, here's." And he used to love music. My dad passed away, unfortunately, but he used to love Bollywood music. So he's probably heard your songs, right? He knows them. So he would always be playing music, listen to music, and then he just buys me this keyboard. So I'm like wondering, what do I do with this? But I start to get like a feeling for the keys quite quickly. And this keyboard was unusual for that time. It for the price it was, it had the ability to synthesize sounds. You could change the frequencies of sounds. So you could kind of make your own sounds. And it had like pads which would allow you to record a groove, like whether it's a melody or a beat, because it had little drums on there. And so you could program loops of rhythms and progressive like loops that you could sequence. So at that time, I got into dance music in the UK. And dance music typically has like loop patterns of beats, rhythmic beats, and grooves and bass lines and so on with a little melody riff, like a hook. So some of the music that was coming out then, I was just blown away by it. So I was like, how do I make this? So I'd listen to it and I'd start tinkering around first by copying the melodies and the loops and the beats. But then I had to do it myself, right? So then I started to become creative by just experimenting and then playing with sounds and tweaking the frequencies. I started to make music that didn't actually sound that bad. I was like, wow. And then I started realizing I could actually create melodic hooks. I had like a knack for creating hooks that stick in your head. So I was obsessed with this thing. And then my parents were freaking out because I was spending all my time on this, not doing anything else. And obviously they want me to study. So then there became a battle between me wanting to compose music and my parents wanted me to study. But then to add on top of this, at school that I was at, they would have a music class. And the music class wasn't like a typical teacher. I don't know if you've ever seen a movie called Dead Poet Society, where you have this renegade teacher and they don't follow the script or the protocol. So she would only encourage people, the kids, to compose. So that all the classes were about making songs up, even if they're bad. And then through this, I discovered that actually I could compose music. And then I would have like kids who could sing songs over the top. So now we were like, the teacher loved it. She was like getting me to perform at these classes. And then once I remember playing on the actual school hall, doing a little of my own concert with our singers. So I just got this obsession with creating music. And this teacher unlocked something because I never was taught classical composition, like not composition, but performance. You know, that way, most when you're classically trained, most people get really good at playing the same song without breaking the rules. So they get amazing, brilliant playing other people's music. But I don't think that's creative by nature. That's like you become a great player, but you can't compose your own melody and you get really rigid. So then I found this. I realized that I had an edge over people who were classically trained, that I could actually come up with hooks and melodies and break the rules and make something that sounded like it had never been made before. So she never taught anything classical to anyone, any of the kids, even though they were meant to be part of the curriculum. So I was just free to make whatever I wanted. So this definitely unlocked something at a young age in me, which was that I realized I had this innate creative potential. I had like curiosity for it. I used to get bored relentless at classroom studies because the teachers would just be so monotonous, just relaying the same information that's in the books, and they would never explain anything in a creative way. They would never illustrate anything to help you understand and learn. So I couldn't handle that world. And music was this complete world of fantasy and reality and all this, a new form of reality. So I then actually was like, "That's what I'm gonna do." That's why I set myself, and I'd stick pictures of, like, my favorite, producers, artists, bands on the wall, and I wanted to be those people, right? And so in the end, long story short, okay, I did do the studies. I did get the grades. I became a pharmacist. I went for a pharmacy school, but that's not what I wanted to do. It was just to tick the boxes, right? Make my parents happy.
So, what's fascinating is how you explain your own kind of, through just your own curiosity, the way that you figured out a way for yourself. Because, with music, I found that people need so much of being tutored or teaching before they find the confidence to create. And you brought another thing, which is the problem in the education system where you're not really encouraged to just find your own way. You are so conditioned and that's how they like it. So I'm so happy that you actually found a teacher, a mentor who sort of allowed you to start thinking differently and to develop yourself.
Yeah, I think that's the secret, is that I was blessed to experiment and become creative, and I wasn't put into a rigid box. And so I don't think everyone has that blessing. Plus having a keyboard without lessons, right? Like your parents usually buy you a piano so that you get lessons, and then you're in, then you're locked into this rigid thing. Now, like in hindsight, I think some lessons, piano lessons would have helped, but not too much. And because that would have helped just be a better composer in the end.
Another thing I noticed with this is that parents of a little earlier generation, they didn't really help the way parents today. They're obsessed with their children's futures. I mean, things are planned before the child is born, lessons and huge plans. And actually, I found that this kind of an over supported environment, through all my conversations, I found that it's unfortunately not really enabling the individual spirit and just their own curiosity, their energy levels to get developed. They're just being programmed and they're being
Yes.
limited by this. So I'm very glad that you touched upon this because it's It's actually one of the fundamental principles of creativity that don't over help and, over extend. And so a lot of parents really miss this, especially in today's times, I think, where there's too much awareness about parenting and you should do this, you should do that, and just letting the child be, helping a little, but then allowing them to really find whatever their calling is and wherever it's leading them.
100%. Yeah, that really, really helped me. And so what happened was in the end, I became an entrepreneur at a very young age. So, like, at that time, dance music was still kind of up and coming. It's not like it's so popular now, right? But back then, the club scene was still a little bit underground. It was known as underground dance music, right? So, to get gigs, like the easiest route, it was hard to go and play at other people's venues unless you had lots of hit records on that scene. It was easier to do your own events. So what happened was I started to put on my own raves, right? And it started with 200-300 people, but then in the end, I managed to get a contract at a super club that opened up in my hometown. And now I went from 300 people to 2,000 people every month for 3 years. So imagine, like, we put on this big event and every month, and now I had to become creative in another way as an entrepreneur, as a promoter. It's another form of creativity. And so I combine at a young age this love of music, but with a bit of entrepreneurialism. And what that inspired me to do at university was create a loop. I figured out a loophole in the system. I created a dance music society. And this loophole, I had a brainwave. I remember sat with my friends and we're trying to figure out, like, how do we get cool music played at university? Because they had all these cheesy events, cheesy parties with pop music. And I said, you know what? There's a loophole. If we create a society like the politics society or the philosophy society, the religious society, Hindu society, we could get the university to fund us to put on events. And those events can be whatever we want because it's our society. And I looked at the constitution and we had to create a constitution, and it was like setting up some kind of like like society. That's what it was just like. It was I was learning how the world actually works, right? Societies are just governments in a way, and bodies and governing bodies, right? So we created a society using the legal framework of the university that allowed us to fund the university, for the university to fund us to put on raves at the university. It was amazing. And for the first time ever, there was underground dance music at this event and at the university of venue. And it changed everything because now this started spreading, and this was the coolest events to come to. But what happened was I left a legacy for 14 years where, because of this constitution we created, the presidency, which was me, was passed down generation to generation. 14 years later, and everyone who went through that experience of creating this and passing it on all became entrepreneurs. They all went out. They didn't do normal conventional jobs. They went and became successful entrepreneurs. So see what I mean? Like, what I figured out was actually there's creative ways that exist for us to do anything in this world. Everything's limitless. There's a limitless potential. Whatever you can think of, there's a way, a loophole, or some kind of legal way to do almost anything. And that's why there's a lot of darkness in the world too. There's a creativity in the darkness as well as the light. So, but what I realized is that the world is a playground. We can manifest anything we want.
So beautifully put. And, I'm so glad that you shared this because I feel a lot of people that seek creativity, that seek self expression, one of the strongest areas where they fall short is in this entrepreneurship or the idea of how to really get whatever unique thing they've created, whatever idea they've developed, how to get that out in the world. Because the creative journey doesn't actually end. And this so perfectly sits on the definition of creativity, where it begins with novelty, which is a new idea, something new, something you imagine, and then agency, where you put all of your energy to bringing it to life. But the last and most significant part um, is just how is it going to land in the world? A lot of people, some even unfortunately, pass away without the idea ever coming into the world. And so this concept of how you shared that you came up with something new. You really worked, you put in everything. And then eventually it was the entrepreneurship idea that really allowed it to land into the world, create a sort of sound environment that hadn't really existed before. And this is an incredible thing. And then, of course, eventually it even translates into other unique ways. But once, did you think at this point that that music was going to be your career?
So I think what happens is when you put the right um, fertilizer on the soil, right, the flower grows like very well, very easily. So I think I just was given the right ingredients, right, to grow like this flower. Um, and there's always going to be weeds along the way, and the weeds did come in. But like I think that goes for anybody, right? So like I think it was the perfect mixture of, being in an environment that allowed creativity, but also the freedom that my parents weren't too restrictive. Like some Indian parents can be very, very hard on their kids and force them to be a certain way and conform. My parents weren't like that, thank God. Um, and also finding my passion at a young age. So this unlocks something in the brain because my parents aren't like what do you call artistic people. My mum's very academic. My dad is worked in a corporate job. They weren't like where you say creative people apart from the music that they loved, but that was more listening rather than composing. So I think something unlocked in my brain at a young age because of and I think everyone has certain genes that can be switched on, a creative gene that can be switched on in the right circumstances, especially if it's in their nature, right? So in my nature, the music was there because of my parents. It's passed on, and I believe we get conditioned at a very young age with our kind of desires, and some of those desires are inherited genetically, ancestrally, right? And so in the law of karma, we're all born with karmic action we must, you know, spend on this earth, right? As part of our game that we're playing here, this soul's journey. So in my karmic lineage, I was obviously predestined to have a passion for music. And music is what guided me to what I'm doing today. But I think like what happened was the 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 real passion I have for making music was on a much deeper level than the kind of person who's on tour as a DJ in clubs and playing kind of in the regular kind of venues and stuff. I think I was meant for another venue, right? A different kind of stage because I also was passed down the scientific lineage from my mum's side. They're like very academic, scientific. My mum's a doctor. And I was also brought down the marketing like kind of that side from my dad. That was instilled from a young age. And what this did as well, and because of my unique nature of being an Indian, right, who's also already has to do one of these careers. Once you do that, you can do anything you want. So I became a pharmacist. I was now a pharmacist, right, on a doing a degree. What happened was I had to make, even though I music was what I wanted to do, I had to make a very tough choice, right? Because In my finals, there was a shooting that happened at the club that my events were at. Not my event, because my events are all love and light, but some horrible music scene had infiltrated this club as well, and they brought a lot of bad people to the club, and there was a shooting, and it meant the club was going to get shut down. And here's the other thing about music: music has the power to create culture, and it can be bad cultures, it can be good cultures, and so I witnessed the power of music to corrupt consciousness on that scale, on a big scale. With this certain type genre of music called UK garage, and so this party got shut down, the whole venue got shut down, and my business partner at the time, he actually was much younger than me, and he totally rebelled against his parents because he only wanted to do music. He had no degree to fall back on, and he was running this event with me. So he was saying to me, "You got to come back. Screw your university. We got to save this event. Find another venue. We need to do it now. Time's the essence. Can't leave it too long." And then I'm here, like, having to do my finals. My mum is like, "Beta, you don't you better finish."
Better
So
finish
yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
college. Yeah.
So, so I had to make a tough choice, and I went down the security path, finished the pharmacy degree, and I was like, "Okay, I'll fix it once I finish that." And of course, by that point, it was too late, and now I'm stuck in a cubicle dishing out pills all day in a coat. So I went from this guy who played in clubs with thousands of people to wearing a pharmacy jacket, dishing out pills, sticking labels on boxes. I was like, "What has happened to my life?" And this went on for 7 years. But in those 7 years, I also carried a lot of my bad habits from the rave days. I mean, that was a very hedonistic scene, full of drugs, alcohol, crazy lifestyle, no sleeping, Um, and I was using that as an escape. So I'd still have those nights out and parties and stuff on the weekends. So I was just breaking down inside. I was like spiritually just dissolving because I was no longer being creative. I had no time to work on my actual passion, music. And any time I had, I was just too exhausted. So I never ever got that break that I wanted in the music scene. And then along the way, I had a big breakdown and ended up going to kicking and screaming to a Tony Robbins event. And this person who took me kicking and screaming is what I call another prisoner of Indian mums, right? Where he had to do exactly what his mum said. He had to marry the girl that she wanted him to marry, and he had to become a medical doctor, but they also bought him a guitar at a young age, right? They gave him lessons, and he became the best guitarist I've ever heard in my life, and what a talent, right? So it was like he was cursed because he could have been a phenomenal professional guitarist, but he had to become a doctor, and to be a doctor is so tough as a degree. It's grueling, like, it kills you to do it, right? You need a doctor at the end of that that, degree, right? So he had once you're in that system, it's so hard to get out of it as a doctor because it's so hard, the work, and you study so much, you spend so much money to do it, and so he was having a midlife crisis. So he was like, "Let's go to this Tony Robbins event." All right. And I was like, what's this guru nonsense? He goes, "No, no, 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 come, come, come. It's gonna be good."
Had you heard of Tony Robbins
No, never
before
heard of him.
this? You'd never heard. So you
I
weren't
thought it was
into
all
any kind of
nonsense.
motivational talks. You never
Nothing.
really did any of that
Nothing. I
before.
was from a completely crazy lifestyle. That stuff, no way. That was not cool. So anyway, I went to this event. I remember on the first couple of days, I was like, I want to do that. This is the stages I want to be on. This is what I want to do. It changed my life. And then third day, the first time I heard anyone talk about diet, nutrition, lifestyle changes, breathing, meditation as a prevention rather than a cure for disease. So, he was just like, why wait till it's too late?
At this point, Neeraj, had you Was your health really in a bad shape when you went for this?
I didn't have the autoimmune yet, but I was in a bad way. But here, I decided something. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna put this stuff to the test. I'm gonna see if Tony Robbins is full of shit or not. Because I've got a pharmacy full of sick patients. Now, if some of this stuff works on them, then I know that this is legit. So let's do it. Let's prove it. So what I decided to do, because my job was so boring, I wanted to kind of make it a bit more interesting. And I realized one thing, that patients want to get better, but they don't get any interaction with healthcare professionals with information that can get them better. They don't get any value with, and they go to the doctor and even pharmacists for a bit of counseling, actually, for help. They look them with so much trust and respect that helping that they're gonna solve their deep problem, which are usually emotional stuff.
You know, Neeraj, this is something a little better in India, though, where, the doctor does have enough time and patience to counsel with you. Even the pharmacists, they kind of take far more effort to speak with you. But this is one thing I've experienced in Western countries, being in the US for 24 years. I've seen the difference that really you don't get the kind of counseling or the one-on-one interaction with doctors that really helps you understand yourself as an individual and uh, entity, and not just like a number that, okay, you have a headache, take a Tylenol, paracetamol, but somebody who engages with you that there could be something more wrong with you.
Yeah, what happened today? Like, how what do you think could have caused it, And yeah, just asking simple things, but having a conversation. So I had no time for that in my pharmacy. It was like a conveyor belt of drugs. So so what I decided was there's a time when you can do a medical use review, and it gives you an opportunity. You can spend 10 minutes just going through their medication. So what I used that time for was to my idea that I came up with, which was I'm gonna write healthy shopping lists for patients and change the food they're eating. Because what I realized was a big correlation between the amount of processed foods people ate and the amount of um, prescription meds they took. It was a clear correlation. Like the more prescription drugs you take, the more processed foods you're on. It's almost like they're in cahoots with each other. It's like the both companies are working together. So I was like, wait a minute. These processed foods are like things you can make yourself if you know how to cook. So I would ask them like, would you like to actually get out of this situation you're in with all these side effects? And most people, like when I gave them this analogy, which is think of yourself as a car engine. Have you ever put diesel into your petrol engine or your petrol into your diesel? Like, yeah, yeah, I've done that. I was like, "Well, how did that go down?" Okay, yeah, not very well. I was like, well, imagine you've been putting the wrong fuel into your super efficient bio engine all this time. And they're like, oh yeah, what do you mean? And then I'll talk to them about processed foods and the problems with it. So then I would like write them a shopping list. And those who went over and took my advice, they started to come off their meds. It was incredible. I was seeing changes like this so fast. So I was like, hallelujah, this stuff works. So I became a believer. Anyway, long story short, this got me promoted to the head office of one of the biggest corporations in the UK who have this in-house Dragon's Den competition. It's a bit like Shark Tank. It was run by the CEO and the founder of this Dragon's Den competition. And they allowed you to submit entrepreneurial ideas. So they were nurturing creativity in the corporation through this process. Because entrepreneurs are the creative ones who come with an idea, but rather than the entrepreneur go off on their own, they had a devious idea of like, why don't we support them so they don't leave us? The best people always leave, right? So I entered this competition and I actually got promoted to head office. So now I'm the guy with a big iMac, right? Whereas everyone else on these tiny PCs, and I have full rights to go and speak to the director, and I can speak to him whenever I want. He obviously saw me as one of him, right? Like entrepreneurs, like this is the thing with corporations. I was blown away by how uncreative and robotized majority of the people are who work there, right? And either that's just the nature of humans, like, and this is where I want to get into Ayurveda a little bit. Maybe it's the nature of human. Not all of them are like me. Maybe I am different. Maybe not everyone can be creative. Not everyone can be entrepreneurial. Maybe you need all the right circumstances to unlock that. Right. So I was having all these thoughts because I was blown away. I was the only guy out of majority of the people in the corporate head office in my department who had a creative vision, who could see things different. I remember once there's a big manager of a huge department, and we were talking. And he goes, you know, you're really creative. Like, I was like, what do you mean? I was like, is it everyone? He was like, no, no, no. Like, how do you do that? I just don't see things like that. I was like, wow, like, shocked me. So then I started to think, actually, maybe like that's normal. Like maybe creativity is rare. And anyway, 6 months into this project, um, the director left who hired me for this, and he went to another job, and I was now left with this middle management who were jealous of me, didn't want me to be there, and saw me as a threat to their careers. So something happened. I don't know exactly why they thought they decided this, but they shelved the project. And I just had this hit of horror because I was like, wait a minute, this could have saved humanity. Like the scale of the amount of traffic this website get, this could have fixed the dietary habits of the whole of the UK, right? Especially with the press jumping on this. So I was like, this is outrageous. Why doesn't God want humans to be healthy? What's going on here? And then I started losing questioning my relationship with God, and I decided to think more like an atheist and start to get really dark thoughts about everything, nature, reality, and this is just all a joke, a cosmic joke, and nothing makes sense anymore, and I've lost my meaning now, purpose. And then boom, I start getting pains in the gut, like bad. I used to, when I was younger, get pretty bad pains sometimes, but this was bad. And then it started to feel like razor blades, right? Every time I went to the toilet, shitting razor blades, like, like you're just in so much pain. And then that turned into like a diagnosis of autoimmune called ulcerative colitis. And I remember now, right, this year of like losing a third of my body weight, um, wearing a nappy when I went out because you have no social life, you can't go out. In fact, it was so bad, I used to sit on a toilet seat with a app, right, on my phone called iPoo, and it was a social network for people on the toilet. It's crazy. So I was on this, and I had more friends on that than in real life, so it was shocking.
You know, I had one
Um,
question that
yeah.
when you were going through this phase, um, how were you taking care of yourself as in terms of your diet and
No.
no. So, so
No, no, no,
everything was
so
out of whack then.
when you lose your passion for life, you stop caring. I mean, I knew all of these foods
Yeah,
and
you
you
had
stop
the
caring about
knowledge.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then all you're doing is looking at all of the side effects and of medications you're on, and then you start looking at like symptoms and what they could be, and like none of them are good, right? So anyway, like I remember now I'm in front of like the clinic. It's the last time I'm over there, right? And I'm freaking out because this is the final checkup. I'm gonna get like kind of a last um resort, you know, plan. So I walk in, and then there's this very obese, overweight lady who's the consultant, not an epitome of health at all, who says, Mr. Naik, you have two choices. One, have your colon removed, right, which is taking out your entire colon and having a colostomy bag permanently. Or two, be a guinea pig for this drug. Like you can be on this experimental trial, sign here. So I'm like, nah, there's got to be another way. I asked him, I'm like, What about stress levels? Nope, doesn't make any difference. What about diet? Nope, shut up, take the pills, basically. So it was so cold and dark that I just left. And I've never been back there since. And I remember that night going home and this terror, pain, and darkness, and having a dark night of the soul moment and flashing lights and migraines like crazy and pain, intense pains. And then the next day, I actually then met a lady who's now a very close friend of our family called Swami Ambikananda. She's an Indian yoga teacher. She's not Indian, she's South African, but she's a yoga teacher in the UK, and she runs Traditional Yoga Association. And she told me, like, you actually have a gift. If you can turn this around, you'll be an amazing role model to others, and maybe it'll give you a new passion. Um, something else you can do rather than be in the pharmacy. So I was like, okay. But I had to let go of my disbelief because there's a yoga teacher telling me you can heal, a pharmacist of autoimmune, which every doctor told me is impossible, right? That there's no cure. So I was like, look, I've got no choice. And then boom, third path opens up, path of the breath. Because now she teaches me the foundation of pranayama. And I remember the first few breaths, just breathing in and letting go with a longer exhale than my inhale, just with a rhythm. It just let go of so much stress. And then adding affirmations on top, mantras like I am calm. And it started to just turn off this pain feeling, this intense fear that's inside. Autoimmune is fear manifests as disease, right? It's the healthy cells, the immune system starting to attack healthy cells. They can't tell the difference. So thinks of everything as a threat. So when you see the world as complete threats, and this can be on a deep unconscious level.
Neeraj, I had a question before you continue. That because I think a lot of people might wonder about this. That do you feel that it was intense fear, and perhaps that you weren't doing what your heart was really into? Were you in a very fearful state before the body started to collapse like this?
I think it's a fear that is unconscious, where you lose trust in the divine. I think when you don't have something higher than you that you believe supports you, like the universe, the mother, the divine mother, and then it's also related to your own mother, right? When you feel like they're disappointed in you, or that you feel like a rejection from them, that causes unconscious fear. You may not consciously be aware of this internal panic that's going on because you see everything as a threat. You don't trust anything anymore. So this all links to your divine mother as well, who's your real mother, because we have inside every cell, we have tiny car engines called mitochondria. It's what produces the prana, the life force, the chi. And that mitochondria has its own DNA, all right? And that's what produces the energy that drives all the functions of life. And the way we produce it is through breathing. You breathe in oxygen, oxygen comes in, and it burns with glucose from food to produce like an internal combustion engine. Oxygen, water, sorry, CO2, water, ATP, life force energy, right? And that's the basic equation of life. So your mitochondria is your vibe. Okay, it's what creates your vibe. It actually controls almost every function in your body. Like it depends on healthy mitochondria, from your hormonal system to cognitive function to everything. Depend
And
on your mitochondrial health,
just your breath has that power to shift everything.
because we can upgrade the mitochondria with the breath. So, but then that DNA of your mitochondria is passed down only from the mother, not the father. This is why you have such a strong link to your mum, whether you like it or not. So when your mum is disappointed in you, that creates the greatest turmoil in someone's life, right? Whether you're a man or a woman. And people don't realize the power of this. And only the ancient traditions understood this, and they really respected the value of the mother. right? And the goddess that she is. So this tradition's been lost, and it's been become we become the polarization has been split between male and female, and a lot of kids have lost their respect for parents. They'll find out how that affects them later on in life, right? But I have a daughter right now, and the affection and bond and dependence she has on my wife is just incredible. I can't match
Mm,
that.
yeah.
It's and every mum knows that the bond is the strongest with them.
It's biological, yeah.
It's biological, and it's your mitochondria is connected, so your vibe is from your mum. So your energy line is connected. So what she feels, you feel. You don't even realize it, right? So because I've been rebellious and I went off pharmacy, I worked so hard to prove to my mum that I can be something. Because I was a terrible pharmacist, I was a loser, and I failed in the music business, because I lost all that stuff. And I was just going downhill, and then I borrowed money to put on another event, because I was desperately trying to escape pharmacy. This was like years before. We ended up in massive debt to somebody that my mum really respects. So even more embarrassment, right? So all of this is internalizing.
So much was
Yeah.
accumulating in all of that
Yeah. And then it just
in the
pops after a
fear.
while. So the great thing is that we can reverse it. We can heal it, right? And the breath is everything to do with it. The catalyst for the transformation is the breath. So she taught me this foundation of pranayama. I went really deep into that, and then I uh, went really deep into Ayurveda. And this is where I really understood that we're all so unique and individual and different, and that there is a reason why I'm creative, and other people in my family aren't as much. And it's all to do with energy again. So we can go into that a bit if you want, the Ayurvedic system and because this really helped me to find the right lifestyle that suits me.
No, I think that's the power of Ayurveda, that they respect, each individual as a unique entity with their own conditions and situations. And somehow the Western perspective is one sort of one pill for all, and
One pill
that
for every
really
ill.
does, yeah, and it just doesn't work that way.
No.
And it's lovely to hear how perhaps all the different things, perhaps from your background, from your own curiosities, your interests, how they started to align together in a sense to s- to show you just your own uniqueness and your own way of discovering things. But
Oh,
do
totally.
do explain a little voluntarily. Do explain a little bit of the Ayurvedic approach as well, so that it'll help in connecting all the dots.
Yeah, totally. So our nature is our identity. It's who we are internally, kind of programmed and designed to be, right? From part ancestry genetically and part from environmental exposure, right? And in the Ayurvedic system, our nature is, um, like our personality, our action, our karma, and dharma, and everything
Mm.
combined. And it's a default state of our being. This can be put down to state of energies, three different energies, right? Primary energies. So we have, and these are like archetypes. So they have their own personalities, right? And their own kind of nature for themselves. And we can be any, like a combination of all three in different, expressions like of intensity, or we can be like predominantly more one, right? Or a combination of two, or balance of all three. So the first one is called Vata, right? Which I call the creator archetype, right? This is Brahma, okay? From the three main gods. Then we have Pitta. Pitta is fire. It's it's the metabolic energy. It's the driver. It's what drives action. It makes things happen, right? It moves things into action, right? Um, and that would be Shiva. Okay. Then we have the stable energy, the stabilizer or the balancer, the grounder, the anchor, right? Anchor, which we call kapha, and it's structural energy. Okay. And it has its own archetype personality, which is like the anchor, the grounder. So imagine these are three types of people. If you can be one or predominantly one or more or a combination of it, but let's say the three different types of people. The Vata type of person, their archetype, this energy would be, if you're more predominantly this, okay, you'd be very creative, okay, and then creative people tend to have certain tendencies. They're very good at making something out of nothing, right? They learn very quickly, but they forget because they're constantly learning new things and it's getting replaced by new stuff and going out, right? So it's like everything's moving very fast through them. So they have invariable appetites. Sometimes they're hungry, sometimes not. They're very forgetful, all right? They have a lot of different friends, acquaintances, because they love difference and change. And they love lots of relationships too, partners even. Okay. They're the artists. They're the ones who see outside the box. All right. And because creative energy is ethereal space, there's not much structure. So they tend to be very skinny, thin framed, tall, lanky, or very small and skinny, but not much matter to them. Okay. Because matter is kapha. Um, and so they're like birds. They fly around and become creative and make songs and sing and dance and play, right? A lot. But they're prone to a nervousness, anxiety, right? Restlessness, okay? They're the ones who can't get to sleep at night because their mind's constantly going. So their mind's very fast. Their thoughts are very active, right? Very active thoughts. And they can eat and eat and eat, but the food just doesn't seem to put on any weight. They're very fortunate. They can eat anything they want. In fact, they need a lot of sweetness. They need lots of food to satiate the appetite. And this helps them become a bit more grounded, but it also feeds the fast acting mind they have because your brain requires a lot of brain power. And the brain power for your brain is glucose, sugar. So if somebody's very low and angry, it's usually because they need some sugar. Give them a little bit of sweetness. Like people are getting more angry these days because everyone's going keto and sugar free, but some people still need a little bit of sugar. Okay. So that's the Vata personality. Okay. Um, then we have Pitta. Pitta are the drivers. So they have muscle, dopamine, they have energy, they have force, right? Um, and they tend to be very good at leaders, bosses, entrepreneurs, because that's what the energy is like in the body too. It's a driver. It produces things, right? It makes things happen, right? And it's directing the functions. It's the metabolic energy, right? So, and that's the combustion, fire. So when energy is produced in your cells, in your mitochondria, you get hot when you exercise. That's the inner fire, right? That's pitta. It's fire, heat, right? So that's the force. That's the ATP reaction. So they're full of energy. Pitta people are strong, steady energy, but they can burn out. They can like go and then burn out, right? Um, because they get hot, they get overheated, okay? And they can get very angry. They're fiery people, fiery nature. Everything's fire, okay? And they tend to be strong and resilient and like that. But they can get heartburn. Heartburn is fire. It's acid, right? Fire inside, heat. They can get boils, right? They look like you've been burned, right? But you haven't. You're just acne, you know, things like that. It's just fire. So that's the pitta person. Now, the Kapha energy is more structural. They're heavier, they're bigger boned, not so muscly, more round faced. Pitta has more square, tight, cut, and Vata is very thin and long, right? But the Kapha is big, and they are very slow in their mind. So that can drive Vata people crazy because they take ages to think of things and come up with an answer. So you might say something to a Kapha person and think they're dumb, but actually they're thinking things through, and they usually come out with the right answer, whereas the Vata people are often wrong, even though they speak fast at first, right? So the Kapha person is very reliable, loyal. They just get things done eventually, right? They just keep the status quo going. They don't like change. They hate change. They need things to be the same, right? So we as human beings, we need all three archetypes inside us to be in balance. But often we are one extreme of those, and you may resonate with some of those archetypes. We can also be a balance, and then there's a nuance. Some people are like me, Vata Pitta. So I'm a creative entrepreneur, right? Creative leader. I'm a leader, but I can't just be leading. I need to be coming up with new things for my team to do, right? Which can drive them nuts because I come up with new ideas all the time. And then I make them do it. I'm good at getting them to do it, right? So it's doubly nuts. And then you need the kapha inside you. You need to be grounded. Otherwise, there's no structure, there's no routine, right? And if you go off balance, you can get all the vata illnesses. You get nervous, anxious, you can't sleep at night, right? You lose lots of weight, you become very skinny. And if you're pitta imbalanced, then you get the heartburn, indigestion, gas. I mean, the gas is more vata, and then because that's air. And then kapha is you can get obese, overweight, lazy, mucus, a lot of mucus, not be able to get out of bed in the mornings, right? Lethargy. And so you can, with the Ayurvedic system, identify exactly what balance of archetypes you have inside you to work out your overall nature, which is one or more of those in combination, right? So then you can figure out what is the right lifestyle plan that suits those energy types. Okay. So, because the food, everything affects energy. Everything is energy. It's all information. So the food you eat, you are what you eat. Okay. So what you eat, you consume, has a huge impact on your energies within. So you can find out what's the right foods for you. What are the foods that balance vata and pitta energy, right? But also you'll find, because for me, it's common sense. I'm more vata pitta, so I need a bit more kapha in my diet, right? I need more grounding, nourishing, heavy meals, like not like all airy fairy food. So when I had colitis, fell down the raw vegan trap. And vata pitta people, they shouldn't have raw vegan. Raw vegan is purely vata, right? And I'd add spices to it to make it even worse, which is pitta. So I'd be in an even more intense pain, like, and gas, beyond gas, right? So you need more kapha foods to balance vata pitta issues. So also it's done to taste. Food is down to taste. Vata food is more bitter, astringent, right? Brittle, dry. Pitta food is fiery, pungent, spicy, and it makes you feel warm inside, right? And then kapha foods are more sweet and savory, right? Fatty, oily. So they're the tastes. So what I need is more sweet and savory in my life. That balances me, but not too much. Otherwise, then I get too much kapha. The belly comes out a little bit, right? So I got to balance it. But I don't have the problem that kapha people have, who need to go on these more raw vegan type, keto type diets, which completely strips away the sweet and savoriness, and that helps them put on a bit more pitta and vata. So people who are very obese, they benefit from more vata pitta foods, right? So you see, it's very logical. So if you are one nature, you just need the one that's the least nature is the one that's going to keep you in balance. So you can create a lifestyle around that.
I'm a kapha. Yeah. So
Yes, okay, no.
and I related with everything that you said now.
Yes. And they tend to have the best singing voices, Kapha people. That's a actual
Thank
thing
goodness for
in
that.
the sutras that's written down in stone. They have melodic voices. So the other thing is also careers are can be discovered from this. So for me, being a creative entrepreneur is my comfort zone. It's like my flow state. So this will determine your flow state. Being a if you're a Kapha person, um, you may prefer the more routines, the family life after a while, right? Rather than being a creative on it can be tough. So you need if you do go down that road, you often need a good manager who's a bit more vata and a bit more pitta, right? To give you the motivation to do what it takes, right? To drive you, to push you forward, right? And if you are a pitta person, you need to be a leader, a boss. You need to be in charge. You got to know what you're good at. What because if you're a pitta person, you end up um like doing some routine job over and over again, working for someone that you hate, you're gonna go nuts. If you're a Vata pitta person, even more nuts, right? If you're a Vata person, game over, finished. Or you can't work in a routine job, doing something over and over again, monotonous, ever. You'll get sick. So in the Ayurvedic system, it tells you that if you go off balance, you get disease. Dis-ease is a spiritual disturbance. And then it goes even deeper. Because what does spiritual actually mean? The word spiritual means to breathe, right? It comes from the Latin root spirare, breath, life. So spirit is breath, it's energy, life force. So prana, breath, pranayama is breath control. So they knew the breath creates energy, okay, back then, but it also manipulates energy. So any spiritual disturbance will show up if someone's going through spiritual disturbance in their breath. You'll observe it, all right? Like someone's got a vata disturbance, you'll see fast, erratic, nervous breathing patterns. Someone's got pitta disturbance, you'll see fiery like breathing that you'll see, over breathing but in a fiery way. You see kapha disturbance, you might see mucus congestion in their breath. Okay? So you can even see the spiritual disturbance through someone's breath. And the way we correct we begin to correct the balances is to normalize the breathing first. Bring back people to healthy breathing. And the ingredients to healthy breathing is someone's breath, they should look like they don't need to breathe at all. When someone's in a complete at peace within, with no spiritual disturbance, they breathe like somebody who doesn't breathe at all. That's what Lao Tzu said. The perfect human breathes like they don't breathe at all. And yogis even measure people's lifespan by the number of breaths that they take per minute, not by number of years. I mean, that's how you determine their age, how long they're going to live. And, so somebody who breathes very hard, fast, is usually nervous, and they obviously, they're ones probably on their way to burnout. They're over breathing usually, and which means their lifespan gets reduced. But somebody who's got a peaceful, slow, calm breath, their lifespan expands. And the whole system of yoga and what we do in Soma Breath, Pranayama, is to balance the breath, to bring spiritual ease, peace to the rhythm of the breath, so that all the doshas, what they call the elements, the avatars, the archetypes within you come into harmony and balance, right? So that's what we're about holistically, using the wisdom of ancient India, Ayurveda, and from the science that I've researched, put together the system that helps people really figure out who they really are.
Yeah, I think that's just uh, a way. I think that we all crave that authenticity or even how to reach that dimension of ourselves because we're so carried away by the external, by whatever, we see others, and especially in today's times where imitation and being influenced is perhaps more prevalent than ever before. And that's why I think that there's so much of unease, disease, because people have lost that connect with their own authenticity, and just the connection with their own mind, body, and breath, of course, which is something which we just so take for granted, as if it's just something which happens by itself, but we never really go to understand it. That breath could teach us so much about ourselves. That are we unhappy? Are we fearful? Are we, uh, in some way, are we not in tune with ourselves? And I think you very beautifully explained this whole connection of a holistic approach to to how you heal yourself or how you connect with yourself. But for you, when we come back to this transition that happened, uh, where you started learning with this lady these kind of practices, at what point did you feel that now this could actually become my way of life, my expression? When did this happen for you?
Well, actually, at first, the whole intention was to get better, right? So for me, that was the first step. And then when I did finally heal myself with a lot of experimenting and practicing and researching, um, I was like, wait a minute, this stuff actually works. Now it's my duty, right, to get this out to as many people as possible because a crazy thing happened. So I just like got back to pretty much full health, and I get this email, and a distant relative, he writes, well, it's his mum writes in saying, my son, can't remember the name now, has been diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and I heard that you've managed to heal yourself, and I was just wondering if you could give him some advice because we're really worried. So I was like, yes, great. So I sent off an email. I was so excited because now I could finally help this person. As a pharmacist, I couldn't help this person. So I wrote off this email with my whole plan, exactly what I did, and then never heard anything back. And then a little while goes past, a week or two, and then I find out that he actually died of the side effects of a medication for colitis. And then that was it. That's when I was like, this is it. This is my mission now. I have to get this out to the world as much as I possibly can. That's it. And so my first mission was like, how do I get this in to people to want to listen to me? Right. I mean, I have this crazy story now, but I was like, how can I actually inspire everyone to do this? Because it's prevention is more important than cure. Right. And what I realized was that these breathing practices, they can be a bit monotonous and boring and sometimes a little bit difficult. But it's quite simple. Rhythmic breathing is a foundation. If you can master rhythmic breathing, you can actually get towards something. And then if you learn some deeper techniques like kumbhaka, like breath holds, you can go even deeper. What I realized was I need to find a way to make this stuff a habit that sticks to you rather than you have to stick to it. And that's where I brought in the music again because I had this aha moment. I was like, a lot of the pranayama practices, they have rhythm. They're counting, right? They used to use mantra beads for counting, but they would have this count to them. So I was like, well, what I should do, because music's got a beat to it, is just time the breath to the beat and make the music 60 beats per minute. So the breath is every 1 second, just like in the books I was reading and what my Swami taught me. So I was like, wow, okay, that was easy. So I started to put the breath, make the music the breath pacer for the sessions. And then boom, everything changed. Because now you look forward to doing the practice because the music is something you start to really enjoy and you get hooked to on it. And then you just breathe in beats. And that's the name of what I call my music technology, proprietary music technology, breathe in beats. and it's an invention of pranayama, of taking pranayama to another level. But if you listen to mantra, if you listen to mantra singing, it is pranayama. Every chant, every hum, every tone is done to music with a groove and a pattern that invokes changes physiologically, and that's what mantras are, is breath work. So I realized that this is all there. It's thousands of years of wisdom. And there's even a book called Nada Yoga, which is one of the yogic texts, which is all about music and sound and mantra and patterns and how it influences physiology. So I was like, well, I'm going to make the modern version of that. And I'm going to put all my cool music that I used to produce to use again and make soundtracks for breathwork. And then this whole field of breathwork started to emerge. It wasn't very much known, like we're talking 2012, until a guy came along called Wim Hof, who a lot of people have heard of. Um, and we ended up joining forces. I ended up writing the music to the Wim Hof method and the soundtracks and the courses. And I was like, this is the perfect front man to this, because he's doing breathwork, breathing techniques, pranayama, and that unfolded in a beautiful way, and he became like one of the biggest celebrities of our time, influencers of our time. And but then I really wanted to create a pharmacy of techniques, so that's Soma Breath. Soma Breath is the pharmacy of breathing techniques, and music is a core component of the rhythmic music.
Is it that you use the traditional pranayam sort of forms like Kapalbhati, Anulom Vilom, or all of these? Are they integrated with music and
More the Bastrika done rhythmically,
Basrika?
and
Hmm.
it's called Savitri Pranayama, right? And Kumbhakas, breath holds.
Yeah.
And when you hold your breath for a certain length of time, okay, beyond 60 seconds after an exhale, you trigger a state called intermittent hypoxia. And intermittent hypoxia is a physiological phenomenon that actually leads to stronger, healthier mitochondria, right? So it may sound weird, like why would holding your breath like make your mitochondria, s- stronger? Like surely it should do the opposite. Like, well, here's the thing: when you do controlled stress on the body, whenever you subject the body to any form of stress, growth happens, right? You shock the body a bit and it freaks out and it goes, okay, I better prepare. So it shocks it into growing stronger, okay, more resilient. That's why you go and train. That's why you go do weights down the gym. But you can do the same controlled stress on your breath. And when you hold your breath just for the right length of time, not too long, you can actually hold your breath quite a long time, like many minutes. I know people can hold their breath 24 minutes. A friend of mine, Stig Siverson, who had a record for that. I think it's been broken since. You actually um, only need to hold it 60 to 90 seconds for this magic to happen. And it creates an adaptive change inside you. You stimulate more red blood cells to be produced. You actually wake up stem cells out of circulation. Stem cells go to areas that need healing, restoration. You actually increase blood flow to the brain. You create neurogenesis on the brain, called biogenesis, mitochondrial biogenesis. You also increase the amount of coronary collaterals in the heart. These are heart's natural bypasses. Many different improvements happen because when you deprive oxygen, which is one of the most primary ingredients for fuel, ATP, then it really shocks the body into action, right, and resilience. And you can go without food for weeks, water for days, but breathing just minutes. So really, it should be the thing we master first, and it's because it has the number one impact on all of your biomarkers and biorhythms.
Right. So one question I had, Neeraj, is that does it really matter whether you nose breathe or mouth breathe? Because I've had this problem of over the years now tending to mouth breathe more, and
Mm,
I just don't feel good about it. I just
no, it's
also my
bad.
mouth, my throat has started to become very dry because of that. But my
Mm,
nose is kind of perpetually closed or blocked. And
Really? You got
yeah,
to do
so
something about that. So that's why
yes.
you need to do a course of SOMA Breath. That will fix it. So nasal breathing is essential. Okay, the nose is a filter for the air. It warms the air. It's like an air humidifier. It creates a perfect environment for absorption, and it filters the air, cleans it. So if you don't breathe through your nose, you don't get proper oxygenation. Also, when you breathe through your mouth, it goes into your chest. When you want the air to go into your lower lungs through your nose, that's your parasympathetic. If you breathe into your mouth, you get sympathetic nervous system reaction. Okay.
Why does this
So,
happen more when we sleep or when we lie down?
ah,
I tend to mouth breathe mainly when I sleep, not when I'm,
yes, that's the
yeah.
culprit usually is sleep. So you've got to sleep always on your right side, not on your back.
Mm.
If you sleep on your back, it's game over. I remember this one time I was coming home. I was working quite late, and then I went upstairs and I heard this sounded like a monster. Like it was super scary, and I couldn't believe it. It was pitch black, and I was walking in, and my wife had fallen asleep, and she had her phone by her side and the light on, and she had a face mask on. So she had gone to sleep listening to one of my Soma Breath sessions with a face mask on, and it was this crazy like sound I've never heard her do before. And she
Mm.
was because she was snoring on her back. She was making this gurgling sound. It was like horrific,
Mm. Mm.
like some scary movie. But with the face mask, it made it 10 times more scary,
Yeah.
like you're possessed.
Yeah.
And I remember the shock of me screaming woke her up, and it caused such a crazy situation.
So
But
is sleep apnea connected as well to this whole mix?
yeah, often one of the culprits is sleeping on your back or being overweight. Kapha people suffer more from this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more of a kapha, and also the congestion. So, but this can all be minimized. It's all down to how you sleep, the type of exercise you do during the day, the food you eat, and pranayama. If you do the right pranayama, you can fix that.
Wow, that's so helpful.
Hmm, that's good.
Uh, so, Neeraj, from here, when did this professional kind of thing really begin? How? Because you're stepping into a domain that is new to you. You haven't really thought of how you're going to bring this whole thing to actually work. How was this journey, and how do you even convince people that you know all of this information and that you're you have it all organized that you can teach this? How did this happen? I know it wouldn't have been like an overnight thing, but what was this journey?
So yeah, so that's another thing that I was kind of I think passed down ancestry because my mum's side of the family, her mum and dad had a school, so they were teachers. So I had it in me to be a teacher. Okay, it was in my kind of upbringing, in a way, in my genetics. But um, I had no choice, right? So I had no job. I couldn't go back to my old career because it would kill me, and I had no money. I was living at my best friend's house because I moved away from home because it was too negative to be in that environment. I couldn't heal in that environment. The guy who told you he had to do what his mum said, the doctor who went mad, took me to Tony Robbins, Mish. He he saved me because he took care of me while I was in the worst day of my life. Um, and I had to make something work. So I read that he gave me this book called The 4 Hour Work Week. And that is by a guy called Tim Ferriss. And it's a book about how to create an automated income using the internet and how you could sell information on the internet. I was blown away. I read this book start to finish in like an hour or so. And I was like, that's it. This is the business model I've been looking for my whole life. So my entrepreneurial gene kicked in again. My brain just kicked into full drive. And that was it. I I went fully into it. And I practice everything. I put into practice everything that was taught in that book. And before I knew it, what I started with, I was like, at first I can't teach people that I've healed myself from the disease. It's too soon. I need to see that there's this lasts, this lasts, and that this isn't just a fluke, a miracle, right? So I said, first I'm gonna do what I'm doing is I'm just gonna sell music therapy music that therapists, like hypnotherapists, because I got really into the power of the subconscious mind, and yogis can use in their classes and put the soundtracks to yoga and stuff, and breathing and all this. And so I started making music therapy content. Decided to put it on YouTube, got a pretty big following pretty fast, learned some trickery with the internet marketing and stuff. And before I knew it, I started to have my first few sales of music. And I was like, wow, people like this kind of music. I thought you have to make dance music or pop music to make a living. I was like, wait, you can make cool like music that actually is really spiritual, like actually is breathing music that makes people better through breathing. You're like, what? This actually people like this? Like this is great. So that started off taking a life of its own. And then before I knew it, I was on this wild journey. I made a website called the Renegade Pharmacist where I put up all my information about my health experiences, with diet change experiences and all the lifestyle information, Ayurveda, Pranayama, everything. Filled the website with that, and its articles started going viral. In fact, one article almost hit billion like views. It crashed my internet, and for a month I was the most famous pharmacist in the world because I wrote this article about Coca-Cola. There was what happens to your body 1 hour after drinking a can of Coke, and it was all my story of in the supermarket chain, seeing the correlation between Coca-Cola consumption and the prescription meds. And it went massively viral, this infographic. Even ended up on Fox News. They did a whole show on it. It's wild times. And then that made my website quite known. And then that's how I met Wim Hof. And then I started to elaborate on this method. I knew that when I met Wim, I was like, this is it. This is the real proof. Back then you still don't quite know. Could be any number of many different things I did. But I wanted to double down on the breath after meeting Wim because I was like, this is really the first thing people should master. It's the one thing that people aren't talking about enough. There's a lot of other information out there, on diet, nutrition, and Ayurveda, but nobody's put it all into one system. And that's why I want to do a SOMA Breath, like really make system for reprogramming yourself by finding who you truly are and aligning your lifestyle with your true archetype, your avatar that you have, which is your part genetic programming and part environmental programming, that creates your sense of self, which can be shifted and changed when you discover what your true voice actually is, rather than the monkey mind that's been conditioned. And through that, the art of meditation is to reprogram, rewire yourself so that you can become a creator of your destiny rather than a follower of someone else's.
That's wonderful, Neeraj. And also, I feel that this system has had such an impact that now I believe Cambridge is studying.
Yeah.
Um, the impact of this. That's such an honor
Yeah, my
to
mom always
kind of
said
have
to
that.
me, "Beta, you study very hard, you go to Cambridge University." And, but that's actually exactly not what happened. Like, I didn't study very hard in university, and funny enough, Cambridge came to me.
Cambridge came to you. You
Yeah,
didn't have to go
that's so
there.
cool.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I think that this is what the creative journey really is, a life lived with complete self-discovery, self-engagement, and really, creating something that really benefits the world. So
yeah.
it's just it's an amazing creative journey, and
But I
I've
think
loved
those who
getting to know it.
Yeah. I think those who really excel as creativity really need to look at their Ayurvedic like nature. And
Mhm.
I have a
Mhm.
whole quiz on my website for this,
Mhm.
somabreath.com/bit. And on there, you can find out what's your actual dosha
Right.
type, your
Yeah, I
archetype.
was just coming to
Yeah.
that where could people actually, what's the best way to reach you to kind of figure out, all that you have to offer?
Yeah, somabreath.com/bit is for that quiz. And from that, you can generate a report that gives you like a lifestyle coaching plan with recommendations. And I think then what people can do is ascertain, like, am I just wanting to do this because I want to do this, or is it because I somebody else is doing it that is cool, and so I just follow what they want? Because unless you know who you truly are, you're going to end up manifesting what you don't want. Right? It's easy to manifest stuff. You manifest what you don't want. It's going to cause stress and misery. So for me, being a creative was already in my nature. Right? I just had to believe in myself enough to do it. Right? Be guided by the divine to get there too. But for others, maybe that's not what they need. There may be people who are more the Kapha types who want more routine and family. They're very good with family and children and food and homely stuff, and they make amazing singers and people like that, especially if they bring out their Vata side. So, there's other ways you can express your creativity. Like, first identify who you truly are. Like, I have to be in this creative entrepreneurial line. But let's say you are a more Kapha Vata. Maybe you have some Vata side to you, you're artistic in nature, and you're a singer. Um, you will need maybe more of a Pitta in your life to give you that career break. If you really want to go to the next level, you need to balance out the energies, and either it comes from you working on that area of you that's deficient, or finding somebody who fills that gap, and then you excel. So a lot of the top companies, they're threes. You have the Vata type, who's a super creative founder usually. You have the Pitta, who's the CEO, leader, boss, and then you have the Kapha who gets things, who just keeps the ship status quo going. And those threes are the ones that would do the best.
No, that's incredible. And I think that just, your approach to breath work and making it more accessible and more universal, I think that's one of the really big services. And combining that with this holistic approach, which makes this a very, very effective system and especially worthwhile to creativity seekers, people seeking to just enable themselves through health and well being. So, thank you so much. Neeraj, this talk has been so enlightening and very, very enjoyable as well. Thank you so much for joining us on the
Absolute
Creativity
pleasure. So
Dialogues today. Thanks
yeah,
a lot.